Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Mind Matters with Kay. Today, I have a very special guest. We have retired Chief Warrant Officer 4, Andre Sanu. Welcome,
Hey, Kay.
Andre.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
All right, awesome. So, I would love for you to, of course, I know with my guests, I just always just dive in. So, I will try to be a little bit more uh, informal. How was your week? How was your weekend?
Uh, it's up and down in my life. It's always up and down. But my philosophy is that you can't enjoy the ups if you don't have downs.
That's
So
about it. That's so true.
it's up and down. But I got a family, so I got kids, I got a grandson, and things are always crazy. It's like controlled chaos around the house at all
Oh yeah.
times.
Oh yeah. Especially with the grandkids. I know all about that. I have two myself, so I know all
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
I love it though. I love family.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I like the grandkids better because like there's less responsibility with grandkids. It's more like love them up. Oh, I love you. We'll go back with your mom and dad, and yeah, then you're back to free. So I kind of like that idea.
Well, my daughter lives with me, and so then I've got my grandkid living here too. So
Okay.
when she's working, we're watching him, and it's like having another kid around the house, and I just love it because I love kids. So
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, I eat it up, and I love hearing them little feet run into the room, and that unconditional love. He's happy to see you, and the hands come out and grab you and hug you up.
Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy it while it lasts, because when they get older, that goes out the window.
I
Yeah.
know.
So
I
enjoy it
tell my son, I got a son. He's 17 years old, and he's 6'2", 220 pounds. Big, big, big kid. And I taught him. I said, "You're never too old to hug your old man."
That's right.
So,
That's
and I
right.
said, and you know what? If you don't be embarrassed to hug your father in front of your friends either. It don't matter. And if they don't like it, that's on them. They got a problem with their relationship at home or whatever. But and so my son will, he'll just put his arm around me no matter where we're at and be like, I love you. My younger son,
Oh,
he
I
still
love
does
it.
it.
I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I love it. My kids are my well, not kids. My sons are 21, excuse me, 23 and 21. So if I walk up to him, put my arm ready, I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Mom, what are you doing? So I have a 6-year old. So I get my love from him because the older ones are like too cool. So I just let them
Right, right.
great.
I get you.
So as I said in the beginning, you are a retired chief warrant officer 4, and you are in the Marines, right?
Correct. I retired from the Marine Corps. Yes,
Well,
after 32 years.
thank you for your service.
Thank you.
That is an amazing thing to do, considering our country and a lot of the stuff that goes on. And I know that the U.S. is better off than a lot of the other countries, right? We have our complaints or what have you, but the U.S. is pretty much one of the better countries, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. Hey, at least we can complain here, right?
this is true. This is
You know,
very
we
true.
we defend that right. You can open your mouth, and if you don't like something, you can say what you want to say.
Yeah. And you guys fight for that. And a lot of people lose their lives. So I just want to say thank you for your service. Um,
Thank you.
that's an amazing, like I said, you have to be an amazing human being to put your life on the line for a country that, another story for another day. But I thank you.
Thank you.
So, nonetheless, I would like to hear about your experiences with the military.
Well, I there's a lot of experiences. I guess where it is the subject that we're talking about this evening. I served in two wars. I was in Desert Storm in 1990, and then I was in Operation Iraqi Freedom back in 2003. Um, we see a lot of people coming home and they have PTSD. They don't know how to deal with the things that they saw overseas. And you know, one of the reasons why I joined the military is I care about people, and I've always been a lover of people, and I like to be in charge. I like being the boss, but there's a reason why I like being the boss, and I like to build a bubble and I put my arms around people and control an area of influence for those people inside my bubble, take care of them and make their lives better. And the more I stayed, the longer I stayed in the military, the higher rank I became, the
Mhm.
more people were inside of my bubble, and I loved it. And so I stayed. You know, it's one of the reasons why I stayed for so long. But I would talk to Marines, that had problems and try to counsel them and try to talk them through situations that they had. And I'm not a professional as far as you know psychiatric work or anything like that, but I cared, and a lot of times people that are in the service will only talk to somebody else who's in the service because they feel like civilians can't relate, and it's true.
Right.
Uh, those experiences are unique, and civilians do have a hard time relating, and it's hard to talk about some of the things that you've seen or even things that you did. You live like an animal, you know, and it's hard for people to understand that. I mean, I'll tell you, and both times I was deployed, there was certainly a time when I couldn't take a shower for a month and a half, and we just didn't have enough water. The water we had was for drinking, and we didn't have water for showering. And you live like an animal, as you can imagine. If you don't shower for a month and a half, and you're in the desert, and you're hot, and you're sweating, and you're covered in whatever's around you. Your clothes are standing on their own. Like at the end of the day, you take your clothes off, and they'll stand in the corner on their own. Um, you're eating one meal a day. Um, it's an MRE, and after eating so many months of eating one MRE, the taste of an MRE is all you taste is the preservatives. They kind of bioaccumulate inside your body, and then every meal tastes the same after a while. So you don't
Mm.
even want to eat that. And that's just some of the mild things. Not having fresh water to drink. When you do drink water, you're drinking water out of that's been cleaned. We have something called a TWIPS. It's a water cleaning, water treatment machine, and wherever they can find water, they suck it up, and if they find an old stagnant pond, they'll suck water up into it, and then next thing you know, you've got drinking water. But whenever you're drinking water from that, it's heavily chlorinated. Um, of course, it's hot because you're in the desert and there's no way to cool down water, especially during the ground war. After the ground war, um, more amenities are brought in, and then you have some of these guys will have air conditioning or they'll have ice, but we didn't have that stuff for the ground war. So the conditions are tough, and that's before people start shooting at you. You're in 140-degree weather, and that's before everybody starts shooting at you, before you start running missions. During Desert Storm, we ran 20-hour missions. You worked 20 hours a day, you had 4 hours off, and then you were back on again. 20 hours, 4 hours off, and you were back on again. And it would literally feel like you were going to sleep. And the moment you were going to sleep, you put your head down, and they would be, Sanu, wake up! You got a mission, you know.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I just fell asleep. I literally just put my head down. They're like, no, you've been sleeping for 4 hours, so it's time to get up.
You
And you
know,
do that months on end without a single day off. Um, it we I think we take a lot of things for granted, how good we have it.
yeah. Yeah. I
And
was
in a
just going to
situation
say
like
that.
that, in a situation like that, you you can go one of two ways. You can think about how bad it was and how terrible it was and how it affected you, or you can say, yeah, that was rough, but look what I got now. Like I got next to me, I got ice water and it's cold and I can drink it whenever I want. I can walk in the other room and I can
Yeah.
go get hot meal from my wife. And I have a flush toilet and I have a hot shower that I can run water in and I can soak myself up and I can be clean and my clothes can be clean. And
Yeah.
these are all beautiful pleasures in life.
Yeah. And this is why I like to have these types of dialogues, right? Because when certain realities don't belong to us, these are not things we second guess or think twice about, right? So as you said, just having fresh water, like just being able to just pick up your cup and have some water, we don't look at that as a privilege. We look at that as a right. We have water here. But if you go to a different country, like you said, they may not have water. You're not taking showers for days, maybe months at a time. And I think that that is an important scenario for us to keep with us when we need to be humbled, appreciative, because again, these are things like, one thing is when I pray, I thank God for the ability to be able to eat, sleep, talk, and walk on my own, because I think that these are underrated blessings that not everyone has, right? So
Right.
just for you to enlist, which is kind of like a contract, right? So it's not like you could just change your mind one day and be like, oh, I'm out of here. You kind of signed yourself over for a few years, right?
Right.
So that now becomes your reality. And when you see things differently and you're able to come back and tell someone who has no idea, that opens up the space for more communication. That opens up the space of understanding each other and understanding that we're more alike than we are dissimilar. And it also just really brings to life how many other situations there are out there, and we all are dealing with something, because although being in the military is considered a career move, in which it typically is once people make it out and when they're in, they go up the ranks or what have you. But people aren't thinking about what it took to get there, the sacrifices, the things that you guys had to do that I know may not have been the nicest thing. A friend of mine was in the Air Force, or it might have been it was one of the two. I know it was like boots on the ground. That's like Army and Marines. You guys are like the first ones for combat, right?
Marines are, yes.
Okay, so it was he might have been a Marine. And he had, again, some people just really can't talk about certain things. But I do know that he said, like, he was messed up from it because they were, out there killing women and kids in certain situations. So as someone who has served in two wars, have you had to do things against your better heart, because you seem like a humanitarian? Did you have to do things that you didn't typically agree with or like? And if you
No,
did, how did you overcome?
that's a good question. For the most part, and you have to understand the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is the service that guards the embassy, guards the nukes. I don't know if you know this, but it takes an act of Congress for us to go to war. You can't send the Army to war unless you have an act of Congress. But the president can send the Marine Corps in first without an act of Congress. It's the only service.
Okay.
We are heavily, heavily indoctrinated in moral and ethics, which is why, and I don't want to say this without come across in a wrong way. Um, I love all the services. I've served side by side with them. We need them all. They all are very important. Not one service is more important than the other one. I love the Marine Corps the best, of course, but we need all the services. But we are heavily, heavily indoctrinated with morals and ethics.
Okay.
That's why if you see a news program, they won't. If a guy robs a bank and he was in the army, you probably won't ever know about it. But if he was a former Marine, you'll hear about it because it's shocking. Well, why would a Marine rob a bank? Because we know that they're held to a higher standard.
Okay.
So that being said, one of the things that we are taught is what is a lawful order and what is an unlawful order. We are not required to follow an unlawful order ever. And
Okay.
that was one of the beauties about being in the Marine Corps. Nobody could tell me, hey, shoot that kid or shoot that woman or blow up those civilians. I'd tell them, no, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. And I can't get in trouble for that because it's not a lawful order. It's not something that we do as Marines. We don't do those sort of things. Now, this came about historically from some incidents that happened actually in Vietnam, where people were ordered to do things that were improper.
Okay.
Um, and since then, they really indoctrinated us on morals and ethics, and that's why we're guarding the embassies, we're guarding the president, we're guarding the nukes,
Okay.
because we're indoctrinated. So I done anything? Um, no, I haven't done anything that was immoral or unethical. Nobody ever asked me to do anything that was immoral or unethical. Um, so I never had to deal with that. If I had to deal with it, it'd be an easy answer because I've been indoctrinated, and the answer would have been no. I'm not doing it, and then my guys aren't going to do it either. And if you keep ordering me to do it, I'll report you for that, and I'll stop you myself because it's not lawful. So what we did do is we went over to fight wars, and more often than not, we helped people more than the combat. We even prisoners, even the prisoners that we took, um, some of the prisoners that we took, especially in Desert Storm, were starving. They were starving. They were really mistreated by their officers. Their officers were eating, but they weren't giving their food to their troops. And when we found them, they were starving. And we only had one meal a day, and we would take our meal and give it to our prisoners so that they could eat. So, that's the kind of mentality and that's the kind of people that we had in the Marine Corps when I was serving, especially back then. Now, things may be changing over the years, but and again, we talked a little bit before we got on about generational differences.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm an old Marine. I joined in 1985. I retired in 2017. I'm almost 60 years old. The generations that came before me, to me, were heroic. They were amazing, and they had much harder lives and much more sacrifice
Yeah.
than I had to go through.
Yeah.
And I think that we our mentality has shifted from that of enduring hardship and being stoic about it, and that prepares you mentally for those hardships so
Yep.
that when you go through those hardships, you become stronger and you walk away from it going, I'm strong. I can handle a lot of things. And we've moved to a victim mentality, whereas, oh, this is what happened to me, and this is terrible, and it happened to me, and you don't understand this has happened. And I hear this, I've heard this over my life from younger people. You don't understand. And I'd say, I was on the front line of two wars. I was on the highway of death in Kuwait. I was surrounded by thousands and thousands of dead bodies. I, I don't know if you went through that or not, but I think I understand. But I prepared for myself for it. And it is horrific. It's terrible. But
Do you
we
think
have
that
to,
society has played a major role in the stark differences in terms of generations?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because the guys that went through World War II, and I'm a history buff, and
Mhm.
I've read the stories, they went through much worse than I ever went through, and they came home and they built a great country. Those guys came home from World War II, and even the guys that came home from Korea and the guys that came home from Vietnam, they
Mhm.
busted their butts, they made something of themselves, and they created a beautiful country. And I think that we are now into this victim mentality where we're so soft, and I worry about it because the rest of the world is not like that. They're not about that. They're strong. You go to talk about the Chinese, they're working 20-hour days. I know I've got friends in China, and I'm amazed at the hours that they work, how hard they work.
Yeah.
And I talk to somebody here about college, and they go, and I'll say, "Where are you working?" And they'll say, "Well, I'm going to college." I'm not working. I'm going to college. When I went to college, I worked full time. I went to college full time. I was in the Marine Corps, and I had a side hustle, a business on the side. So I can't even wrap my head around somebody saying I can't work because I'm going to college.
Yeah, no, you are 100% accurate with that. These children today are very spoiled. They are very entitled, uh, which is why they can't juggle. And again, like I'm all for inclusive, being inclusive and making sure people feel included in what they feel they are, this, that, and the third. I'm all for it because what other people eat don't make me shit. Excuse my language, but I feel like, in a sense, they're doing these kids a disservice because you can be firm without being mean and rude and hateful, right? You can still deploy certain mannerisms, certain, healthy fear starts from the home, right? It goes inward out. So if you don't have that, if everything is a slap on the wrist, or no, he doesn't have to do that, he could just focus on this, and she doesn't have to go to school and work while she's at school, you're not creating a productive person. It's more so it's going to be either this or it's that. It's not I can, tailor my schedule to, okay, this is my work time, excuse me, this is the time I'm in school, this is the time I got to be at work, when can I get a nap in? That's how you start creating productive citizens, right? Young kids growing into adults. But I think that the being inclusive has gone a little too far. I think that it's paralyzing our children. It is now with technology and science as well. With the service, like everything now is like a drone, or where is the physical activity? Where is the physicalities in it? So it's like changing in that regard too, right?
It's interesting that you say that too, because my when I joined the Marine Corps, and it's always been a Marine Corps tradition since the inception of the Marine Corps, was the biggest, strongest guys went into the Marine Corps. They were going to be when the Marine Corps was formed in 1775, November 10th, 1775. They got the biggest, strongest guys they can find, and they put them in the Marine Corps because they were going to have to fight. They were going to have to do hand-to-hand combat. And you ever heard the term jarhead when they talk about a Marine?
Yeah, I have.
So a lot of people don't notice. Like I told you, I'm a history buff. Do you know what that actually means? A lot of people say, "Oh, it's because of the haircut." And I got a big square head, so I fit the bill for that. But jarhead actually came from way back then because these were the fighters. The Marines were the fighters on the ships, and
Okay.
they were so big they would jar their heads on the low beams of the ships, and that's how they got the name Jarhead. So they were the biggest, strongest guys you could find. Now my son wants to join the Marine Corps, and he shows up, and they take a look at him. I told you he's a big dude, and they go, "Wow, he's big," and I go, "Yeah, it's just like just what you want, right?" And they're like, "Actually, we're looking for smaller guys. They're looking for smaller guys now in the Marine Corps. They
Oh my
don't want big, small guys because smaller guys eat less. Um,
God.
uh, they, and if they got to transport them, if they're wounded, they can carry them easier. So
Oh
things
no.
are definitely changing. When you talk about
Ugh.
entitlement, we have lost respect, and we've
Oh yeah.
lost
Oh yes.
the selflessness. of the previous generations. Like I
Yeah.
told you, I want to give and I enjoy giving. Like I'm the guy at Christmas time. Like I get the special gifts and don't tell anybody, and then hide them, and then just wait. You know, like then you show up and you pick it up, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I got this. You know,
Yeah.
but I was and giving my food to the POWs. Like that made me feel good. Like that's what I live for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've run across people where I've tried to do something for them and they were like, "Hey, I'm hurting. I can't do this because I don't have the money to." And I go, "You know what? Here's some money. I'll give you the money." And they stopped talking to me, and I don't understand why. Like, what? Why you stop
Talking
talking
to
to me?
you completely or just in that
Stop
moment?
talking to me completely. And I'm like, I'm just trying to help you out. Like, I got young kids at home that I could be giving their money to. I'll give you a little bit more clarity on that. I run a fighting league
Hmm.
where we do armored combat. And I had a guy who couldn't make it to nationals. I said, "You going to nationals?" He says, "No, I can't make it." I says, "I'll tell you what, I'll buy you a plane ticket for you." And he stopped talking to me. And it wasn't a real expensive ticket. It was like $400. Now I'm not rich, but I got kids. I could spend that money on my kids. And I
Absolutely.
finally found out. I said, "Why?" You know, I ran into one of his friends. I says, "What happened?" I said, "I tried to help him out, and he stopped talking." Well, he says you're trying to force him to go fight. I'm like, they can't even wrap their heads around it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's not the way they are. They
This is
don't
true. They're
understand.
selfish. They don't know anything about being a humanitarian and being a philanthropist and wanting to see
Right,
the good of people. They because everything in their world is negative and you have to scam to get it or rob to get it. And their mindsets are just different instead of them really being appreciative, like, okay, there's no hidden agendas. But some people too may feel like, well, but I think that also will play to your character. If a person knows you, they know it's not coming with any type of strings attached to it, right? Some people just can't take the help, but that's something within themselves. But I would tell you to keep going because that's how God created you to be. So if that's who you are, sometimes we just give that to the wrong people, you know. But you continue to be that secret Santa, and I'll make sure I'm at the Dunkin' Donuts wherever you are or the McDonald's, so I could be a recipient of that.
yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to. I like to help people out, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and that's a selfish thing in itself, honestly, because it's something that makes me feel good, right? So it is in that aspect, it's it's a selfish thing because it does make me feel good to help other people.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And people will make that a double-edged sword. And I don't think that I personally, because I'm the same way. Like I'm a giver, 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 giver. Um, so I get it, and it does make us feel good. But that's I'm gonna have to ponder on that because I never really thought of it like that because that is a selfish act in a sense, but you think of it as it's something for someone else that will also make them feel good. But
Right, right.
to your point, we
I don't
don't
see
know.
I don't see that there's anything wrong with it, or I wouldn't do it. You know,
Right.
and again, it's not pure selfishness. You know, it's the right thing to do,
Yeah.
and it makes you feel good. You
Right.
know, it's but they can't even wrap their heads around it. This generation can't even wrap their heads around it because it's not something they would do. And as much as I like to give, it's still nothing compared to the generations before us. You
Yeah.
know, like I said, the World War II guys, the Korea guys, the Vietnam guys, those guys gave everything, you know, everything they could possibly give. And we live this country at its greatest. And we're not at its greatest right now, obviously, but when
Right.
we were at it at our greatest, you know, whenever that was, 70s or the 80s or whatever it was because of those generations that were selfless and giving that would take care of people and help people out and make programs for people because it was the right thing to do, not because it would give them political influence.
Right. And that's the difference. So I mean, you told me something, well, taught me something, a little bit. Not that I thought anything different, but I guess because it's not my reality, I put them all together: Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army. Although I know Army's kind of like at the bottom. Um, but I will say, because the Marines is built on quality, right, and being politically correct. The World Health Organization says approximately, on average, 30 active duty Marines die by suicide every year. So if the Marines aren't really I'm not going to say in a line of fire. I'm not going to discount what war looks like because I've never been there. But what do you think they could be exposed to that? Now, I will say too, it may not just all be the Marines. It could also have, historical trauma, DNA, genetics, things of that nature also plays a role.
Right.
If 30 active Marines are dying by suicide every single year, what do you think that is a contributing factor of?
Well, first of all, I want to say this, that I wouldn't put any service. Um, I mean, I love the Marine Corps, and to me, that's the best service. But all the other services to me are very important, and the Army actually has some very, very good units, and then they've got some lesser units. But they've got the airborne units, and they've got the Green Berets. They're amazing. Delta Force, they've got some amazing units. I just want to clarify that there are some really, really good units in the Army. I think the number for suicide is actually a lot higher than that. Um, uh, I think if you look it up, it's actually a lot higher. And again, I think it's generational because Desert Storm, when we came home from Desert Storm, um, we all came home and we remembered. It's just the way the mind works. You remember the best parts of it. You don't really, for us, we remembered the, you know, um, we remembered the smell of the desert in the evening. On a hot evening, the smell of the Saudi Arabia desert, and we remember when the war was over and we were celebrating. You remember all the best parts of it, the camaraderie, the funny things that might have happened. Um, when I was called up for OIF, um, I was one of the oldest guys in. I was one of the very few guys that was already a veteran, and I gathered all my guys together and I talked to them about that. And I said, I said, a lot of these guys were nervous, and it was a different feeling. The generation was different and the feeling was different. They were all good guys too, but the feeling was different. And I would sit down with them and I would talk to them and I'd say, listen, all you're gonna remember is the best parts of it. You're never gonna, you may think about some of the bad things, but the truth was, I was wrong. A lot of those guys came home and they were troubled. And I know we had talked on the phone, you and I, a couple of weeks ago when we set up this interview, and I was telling you in particular about a Lance Corporal who was with me through the entire war, and he was with me. At any given time, I had anywhere between 60 and 160 Marines that were under my charge during that war. But he was with me from start to finish, and I made it a point, being the officer in charge, to go and check on my guys every day. I wanted to make sure that they were okay. Did they need anything? Were they having any health issues? Were they having any mental problems? And I would talk to them, and I would just I wanted to interact with them and be on my guard to make sure that everybody was okay. And every day I would see him, and he had a smile on his face, and he would say, Good morning, sir, or good evening, sir, or whatever. And his name was Lance Corporal Lucy. And I can always remember his smile. He was always a smiling, happy guy. And when we came home from the war, we were home for a couple of weeks, and he committed suicide. And I never saw it happen. I never saw it coming. I would have never thought that he would have gone, that this would have happened.
Mhm.
And he left a note, and he said it was because of the things that he saw while he was overseas. Now, he was with me the entire time. So all the things that I saw, he saw. And I thought he was prepared. But the fact is, the generational difference, the first generation during Desert Storm in 1990, that crew of guys, and actually we had Vietnam veterans with us as well in that deployment. That crew of guys, we were all prepared for it, and we came home, and yeah, we saw some terrible things, and we were in combat, and life was rough, and we came home, and we don't talk about the bad things. We still get together and have reunions, and we laugh and we joke about all the things, the funny things, and the funny people that we met, and the funny things that happened.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, do you think that is a contributing factor to why certain servicemen are dying by suicide? If you guys don't talk about the things that you've seen or heard, in a way, it kind of suppresses what you've been exposed to, right? If you're not getting help back in the States, if you're not seeing a therapist or a counselor, because one thing we can't do is escape our minds, right? That's with us 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Can't escape it. So when someone has some traumatic events that's happened to them, and either they don't know how to ask for help, I can't say they don't know where to go, because I will say within the armed services, the forces, they typically have treatment available for um, troops when they come back, right? So what do you think?
Well, I think um, the second group of guys, the guys in OIF in 2003, those guys needed to talk more than the Desert Storm guys. The Desert Storm guys, but there's none of those guys. None of those guys committed suicide. None of my guys committed suicide. None of those guys are going through mental issues that we know of. Maybe they're suppressing it, but they don't show it. But the guys from OIF, the younger generation guys, those guys, there was a lot of trouble, and that's the generation that we saw problems with. Now they talk to us. We talk to each other if there's an issue, and then most of the time we're not professionals, so we try to point them towards professional help. There is not a very good program in place for the Marine Corps. There wasn't a very good program in place for the Marine Corps when it came to that. Um, Whereas some of the other services have better programs, better health programs. We have to rely on Navy health, and quite honestly, they did these surveys, these mental surveys, and it was a check in the box. And if you said you were having a bad day, it was just a check in the box. There was no follow up or anything like that. They wouldn't get you help. They were just like, "Oh, you're having a bad day? Okay, okay, we'll check that off in the box," and that was it. You would do these surveys. You'd really have to push to get some sort of help, um, and it wasn't as easy.
But why is that? If you guys are on the front, and that's my problem, right? And I just want to clarify something too. When I was saying that the army was at the bottom, 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 that may have came out wrong or came across wrong. I wasn't putting them in ranks. I meant in terms of the help, because I know several people who were in the army and really seen some stuff, and when they came back here, it was like nothing. One was like in the welfare office and they weren't really helping. So when I say at the bottom, like I've heard a lot of negative stuff when it comes to the army in terms of them, being there for the members who serve the country.
Right.
But I will say that. But in terms of, the army, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, the Army has much more resources than the Marine Corps does. So the budget, the Air Force has the biggest budget, and then the Navy and the Army get big budgets, and then the Marine Corps gets a small piece of the Navy's budget. So we use Navy services, but we don't get the same services. The Marine Corps gets the least amount, and we have to do the most with the least amount. But again, we're mentally prepared to do that, so we do it. We get by with very little, and we're trained that way. It's funny because um, every training evolution we ever had, we would put in a request for supplies, and we would never get the supplies that we requested. And then when the war came, we were used to it. So we were used to working with very little. So, Marines, the one thing that I noticed in between the Marine Corps and the rank and file, not the special guys in the Army, but the rank and file regular Army infantry guys,
Mhm.
is the Marine Corps has got a can-do attitude no matter what it is. Like, whatever it is, like, okay, you're going to have to plow this field that's the size of a football field, and we don't have any plows, but you're going to have to figure it out. We'd be like, all right, let's get a bunch of Marines on the line, and we'll do it with our feet. We'll just do it, and that's how we did, you know. Whereas if the Army didn't have their, and this actually happened in Desert Storm, General Schwarzkopf, who was a general in charge of Desert Storm, for the first time in history, was going to put the Army in before the Marine Corps. And at the time, they were even talking about getting rid of the Marine Corps. Why do we need a Marine Corps? They would say. So they were going to do this. The Army, when the general said, "Okay, we're ready to launch. Are you guys ready?" The Army was like, "No, no, no. We don't even have our washing machines for our clothing. We don't have. We can't leave just yet." And he made an executive decision at the time, and he was like, "The heck with it. Send the Marines in first, because we
Yeah,
don't care." I told you, I went a month and a half without even washing my body. Like, okay, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. Clean clothes. What is that? My clothes literally rotted off my body during the war and burned during both wars. I had clothes that were literally dry rotting off my body. Where I ended up taking my shirt and just ripping it off like this, and my underwear and just ripping it off and just like, hey, that's it. That's the way it is. So we do. But
yeah.
again, I think that kind of preparedness, that prepared, and I just listened to an interview of Arnold Schwarzenegger the other day, and he was saying the same thing, and I was like, man, Arnold is right on target. He said we have to go through life with hardships to strengthen us. It makes us stronger, and
Yes.
you have to embrace those hardships. Not say, "Oh, my life was so hard. I had to do this and it was so tough and I had to do this." Like, embrace it. Embrace, we say something in the Marine Corps, we say embrace the suck. Like, yeah, it sucks, but let's embrace it. Like, embrace it, conquer it, get through it. Now you're stronger, and mentally you're stronger too, because you're not going, "Oh, this thing that I went through, it's terrible and it's really bothering me." Like, look at what I got now. Look at where I'm at now. Look at what I have. I got a family. I got kids. I got food I can eat. And you know what? When I'm hungry, I just work harder. I had 3 jobs up until I was 52 years old. And I started with 3 jobs when I was 10.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
and I got a nice house, and I'm not rich, but I'm a middle class guy, and I got a nice house, and I got a nice car, and I got some toys. I got a jet ski, I got a quad, I got a motorcycle, just because I worked.
Mhm.
And anybody, that's the American dream. Like, you can have anything you want here in the United States if you work hard. Doesn't matter who you are, and I see this, I don't know. I'm kind of getting off topic here, but this is I'm passionate about. I see people saying, "Well, I can't have this because of my skin color, or I can't have this because of my religion." Like, we had a black president, we have a black vice president, we had 2 black secretaries of states, amazing people. Um, you know, And that's the one thing. Another thing about the Marine Corps is if you're racist and you go in the Marine Corps, you don't last because the Marine Corps is the most non-racist service out there. We are all green.
Yeah, I have
We are
heard that.
all green in the Marine Corps. We don't. There's no black Marines. There's no white Marines. We're all green. And you can be anything you want to be, and you can have anything you want to be, and you're holding yourself back by having a victim mentality. Like you will hold yourself back here because you can look at Obama. He was president. I didn't vote for him. I didn't particularly care for him. The man was a classy man, and his wife was classy,
Yes.
and but I'd have him back in a heartbeat compared to what we got right now. You know
Woo!
what I mean? I'd take him over Trump or Biden in a heartbeat because the
Yes.
man had.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but we had Colin Powell. He was an amazing Secretary of State, and he would have been a great president. Condoleezza Rice. These were some amazing leaders, and they went as far as you could possibly go in our country. And and if you have the mentality, the right mentality, you can have what you want. But you just
Yeah.
got to be respectful and treat people with respect.
I agree. I agree. It does start with respect. Because you can you're not going to get anywhere without it. It takes for you to build relationships with people. When you build those relationships, you're able to prove yourself, and you can keep leveling up. And I will say that everything is mind over matter, but people have to get comfortable, number one, with confronting things that are in their minds. Sometimes people have this distorted view of, if I talk about it, I'm weak. That makes me weak. When people don't realize that you embracing your vulnerability is actually a strength, because you understand that there's something there and that it needs working on. So that way you're getting out in front of it instead of just piling it on and allowing it to fester, because not everyone's endurance is the same, right? Especially if you're coming from an environment where you're pacified and there is no tough love, and there is no you're going to get up and go to work today, or there is no you have chores to do, you can't leave this house until you do them. They, a lot of kids don't have that. There's no structure, right? So if kids don't have structure in the home, which is the base, right? Because that's where everything is kind of shaped and molded from your home. So if
Right.
you are not getting that discipline, that structure, that guidance in the home, and then you go into the military, which is more militant and strict, and they have rules and they have ways of doing things. I think that those would be the ones that really can't handle it, because when they were younger, there was no one to correct that. So they think automatically that it's wrong. They can't do anything. Oh my God, this is it. This is the end of my life. And there's no buff, there's no in between, because it was either this or that. There was no balance there, right?
Right.
So them going into the service, I'm not going to say is a disservice, because of course everything doesn't apply to everyone, but that still does do a disservice, because if you got somebody who's not, like you said earlier in the conversation, you went in, you were mentally prepared. That doesn't happen in today's society. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It doesn't happen the way it used to,
Right.
right? People now are just, I'm sorry, what you say?
In general, like, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rules, but in general, it seems like it's a lot softer, and we have this victim mentality, and you're right, it does start in the home. And one thing I really like that you hit on is, like, you can talk about your weakness, but you got to do something about it. You got to handle it. You got to address it. So you can't just say, "Oh, but I'm this, but I'm that," or "I didn't have a good education." Okay, go get educated. Go to your county college. County college is cheap. Like, I mean, it's cheap if you're working. You
Yeah,
know, just,
yeah,
so you do something about it. I didn't like my life when I was younger, and I did something about it. But
proactivity.
yeah, you can talk about it, or I mean, like in my generation, we didn't talk about it as much. But if you want to talk about it, about things that are affecting you and you want to communicate in a respectful manner, that's fine. But be resolved to do something about it, because the only person that's going to change your life is you. You can't
Is
wait for life to change you.
and I will say I am one of those people where God had to literally put me in a headlock and get me to change because I was running. Okay. I was running and he had to do a forced shutdown on me. Right. So I get that. Has it made me a much better person? Absolutely. But the endurance was treacherous. Um, but I've always been an avid communicate. Well, I didn't have good communication skills, but I was always up for conversation. But I will say that with this mental health advocacy, it's really about creating a safe space first for people to understand that what we were taught growing up is wrong. We can still be stern and have discipline and respect, but still be okay with confronting reality, right? Because again, you can't escape your mind. Your reality is your reality. But one thing is I don't like to wallow in problems. So like, all right, this is the problem. Feel your emotions from it because you are a human being and you are entitled to feel. That's a part of our humanity, right? So feel
Yeah,
how you feel, but don't stay there. Now you feel how you feel. Now it's time to get up, brush it off, and figure out, okay, this is what it is. What do I need to do to fix it? All right, now I need to do A, B, Y, Z, and be productive. You can't just sit around because what's sitting around feeling sorry for yourself going to do? It's not going to end in anything proactive. So
right.
I'm all for, you know, solving the problem, finding resolutions. But I think that with starting these types of dialogues, having conversations with people from all over, different walks of life, different career backgrounds, I think that we're starting to bridge the gap where we can have conversations and even uncomfortable conversations. But as long as we're all being respectful, it's still allowing people to um, speak on how they feel without the fear of judgment, right? And I felt that, you being a retired chief, you were one of the most perfect people to talk about behaviors and entitlement and things of that nature. So before we go, is there anything that you would like to, any advice you would like to give, any last words you would like to
I just
bless us?
want to hit on something that you just hit on, just to kind of emphasize,
Sure.
and that is confrontation. Confrontation is the only way you're going to change your circumstances.
Yes.
And if you do it in a respectful manner and you stay strong, you can have anything you want. But you got to, any problems that come across in life, you can't avoid them. And it's easy. It's easy to avoid, but it's strength. And that's something you can have pride in. You confront all any issues that you have, and then you overcome them. You find a way to overcome them, and there's never been an issue that can't be overcome. There's a way to overcome just about anything, in life. And I love that you said that you confront it. Don't be a victim. Don't you got a problem? We all listen. We all have had problems. Trust me. I've been in two wars. I've
Oh,
seen it.
yeah. We all
But
got
you go past it. You confront that. Yeah, we did that. Now, where are we now? How can I improve myself? How can I improve my life?
yeah.
You have to have that mentality, and then you got to push for it and work for it. And nothing in life that was worth anything was easy, was easily attained. You have to work for it, and that makes it so much sweeter when you get it.
No, it really does. It really does. I've been handed some free stuff and I've had to work for some stuff. And I will tell you what you worked for because you understand the blood, sweat, and tears. You understand, like for me, with my 3 year journey, God took me on a 3 year journey, 3 long years, long years. I spent a lot of nights crying. I spent a lot of nights uh drinking, not wanting to be here, contemplate. So I 100% feel it just got to chill down my body when you said that because it's the truth. You know what I mean? So it's just like, um, again, faith without works is dead. Life is about choices. I don't want to be. I'm not going to choose to be the victim. I'm going to figure out how to be victorious. I'm going to figure out, all right, this is my issue, but what do I need to do to fix this? And
Right.
that's the only way people are able to level up, when you are honest with yourself and you are ready to confront whatever may be in your way, holding you back or stifling you from your next phase in life. But I will say life will never stop lifing, so people just have to become comfortable with confronting these storms and just, prepare for your storms. If it's going to rain and thunderstorm, get an umbrella. If it's going to flood, get a buoy, get a life jacket. If it's going to get your rain boots. It's all about preparation, and it all starts with preparing this right here. This measly,
And once you through that storm, you can enjoy the sun afterwards.
because the sun always comes out after a
That's
storm.
right. That's
Sometimes
right.
it's the most beautiful rainbow, right? So people have to be conscious. Once you get through that darkness, all of that treacherous rain and thunder that was scaring you and lightning that was making you want to curl up under your covers, and it's going to be so worth it. It's going to be so worth it. And at the end of it, you become stronger, and it helps you to endure moving forward. So I thank you so very much, Mr. Andre, for coming on. I would love to have you back, so we can get a little bit more in depth about what you guys been doing in the service, what kind of missions y'all be on, and I'm a little nosy. I want to know. So maybe we can.
Well, things have changed probably so much. I retired in 2017, and things change rapidly in the
Yeah,
service. So
yeah.
they probably want somebody that's a little more current. But
No,
it was a great pleasure talking to you.
nah. I want the good stuff, the old stuff. Everything now is too like on the surface. Nah, give me the good stuff.
I hear you.
But yes, thank you so much for coming on My Matters. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And until next time, guys, on My Matters with Kay. See ya.